The sexual abuse that I went through really sort of put my aging process into supercharged. Mixed emotions, an intense amount of confusion, and an intense amount of shame. We had a child behind my father's back. Not I was sexually abused. The weight of that stress and that toll on a 15-year-old boy, it's immense. But there was a second perpetrator. A woman sexually abused me. A second time, I was raped by a different woman. My stepmother saw that as an opportunity to sort of get out of Dodge by saying that I cheated on her.
I think that she's looked at that as the safest way to get out of it.
Evade accountability.
And again, the manipulation, the deceit is just despicable.
This little girl is just the light of my life.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen her for many years now. She was witty and funny, even as a little girl. I just loved everything about her. In order for her to have an opportunity to leave the country, she had to sort of wave the red flag somewhere else, and my dad would follow the red. She sent him an email that says that I raped her. For me, the most devastating consequence of this abuse, Gary, has been losing my daughter. And that's when I entered a mental health facility at 20, because I came up with a plan to end my life.
The I Catch Killers podcast was a fresh start for me, as I left policing behind and started a new life. Over the years, we've laughed together, cried, and shared some powerful moments. Welcome to I Catch Killers. Welcome back to part 2 of our chat on the I Catch Killers. For those of you that didn't hear part 1, Harry told us about his experience of being sexually abused by his stepmother from the ages of 13 to 16. Delving in really deep, I've got to say, like the emotional trauma and everything else, the impact that it has on your life, and the way that you articulated. And I asked you during the break how old you are. You're only 24. Yeah. You speak with a lot of wisdom for a 24-year-old.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, and it's, when we share these stories, it's not about just sharing it for the sake of sharing trauma. It's about sharing it because, I want people to be able to pick up lessons from this, to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Yeah. To ensure that the next kid doesn't experience even a tenth of what I had to.
Well, I think with people like yourself coming out and speaking about these things, because the trouble with child sexual abuse, it gets swept under the carpet so much because it's such a confronting subject. People don't want to talk about it and will avoid it at all costs. So when someone like yourself is prepared to come out and say, put your hand up and say, hey, this happened to me, this is the impact it had on me. I think a lot of people listening it'll start to dawn on what we're talking about with child sexual abuse, because it's very easy just to sweep it under the carpet and forget about it.
Yeah, it's easy. It's unfortunately the way that society has treated the subject matter of child sexual abuse. You're right. It's allowed people it's given people license to turn a blind eye to it, and individuals like me or other activists who are out in the space, really speaking about these issues. I think for me, what I find is my job is to pull that narrative back and that belief back and say, no, we have to sit, we have to listen, we have to learn.
Yeah, well, you're doing very well at getting people to understand what you've gone through.
Thank you.
So we left part 1 that at the age of 15 you found out that your stepmother, who was sexually abusing you, had become pregnant. Mm-hmm. Your father had a vasectomy. Mm-hmm. He was under the misguided belief that the child was his. Mm-hmm. I think you received a text when they were overseas on a holiday, your father and your stepmother, in the Philippines, and she texted you and said that she was pregnant. You're living in the same house. Mm-hmm. You're seeing the stepmother who's sexually abusing you, and sexual abuse just doesn't seem to be enough, does it? It's the mental manipulation, the psychological manipulation, what she was doing to you. Basically stuffing up your life, like changing your life, putting your life in a direction that it shouldn't have gone. You told us that you found out that she had the child when you were working as doing some a pre-apprenticeship training. Yep. as an electrician. Did you go to the hospital?
I did. Yes, I did, and I remember walking in there, and the sort of weight of the reality of what had happened really kicked in, because the life of that little girl was right there in front of me.
Mm.
And I was on one hand, because of that scale of manipulation that occurred, part of me was really excited to be a father, but the sexual abuse that I went through really sort of put my aging process into supercharge, so to speak. So I was wise beyond my years at that age, and I just thought, this is going to be a real challenge for this girl, and going to have to navigate it. And I remember, because I was saying in the last episode, I'm quite tall and have long arms and long legs, and my father's not necessarily that tall, but my little girl had these long arms and I thought, is that going to be a way for them to find out? And I was worried about that. I was worried about nothing to do with me, but the protection of my daughter, and as strange as it is, and hard to comprehend, the protection of my stepmother.
Yeah, well, you articulated how that came about in episode 1. Looking at it, some of the happiest, proudest, most significant moments in anyone's life, I think if you ask anyone, they'll say the day my child was born. Yeah, that seems to be a narrative that everyone rolls out. I put my hand up. The day my son was born, the day my daughter was born, I can remember it like it was yesterday because it was so significant in your life. I'm trying to comprehend. You must have had that overwhelming, that emotion that it's hard to describe. The emotion of seeing someone that's part of you, that's now there, but also knowing that you can't publicly celebrate that, talk to anyone about it. What was going through your head when you walked in there, and those type of mixed emotions that you're having?
Just as you said, they're mixed emotions, an intense amount of confusion, an intense amount of shame. I felt as though I played a significant role in this happening as well. We had a child behind my father's back. Not I was sexually abused.
Yeah.
I thought I engaged in a consensual relationship with my stepmother, and we had this child behind his back, and now we've got to try navigate that situation of pretending, no, that's actually my sister. So it was the weight of that stress and that toll on a 15-year-old boy. It's immense.
Yeah.
Like it's unimaginable. The fact I'm standing here today is quite a testament to my own resilience. And yeah, it was just a looming weight that I knew I had to put my head down and get through and survive.
You use the word shame, and I've heard so many people come on this podcast that have been victims of child sexual abuse, and it surprises me and shocks me. I understand it, but you're made to feel like you're guilty of doing something. Do you want to just talk us through an understanding of shame? Because you're not on your own, and that's why this crime is so horrific.
Yeah. So as you said, shame is a constant throughout survivors of child sexual abuse. They were made to feel as though they played a significant role in what happened, and part of it is because of that expert manipulation that perpetrators employ. It's part of their playbook. It's part of their standard method to ensure that their victims, what they're trying to do is make sure that they want their victims to feel as though they're on an equal playing field with them.
They're invested in it.
And they groom you and coerce you, not explicitly with language and making you feel loved and making you feel like they entrap you in that. And you're swept up in the moment, and
you're looking for that love.
Yeah, you're looking for that, because they create that entire ecosystem where they can provide that love, but they can also provide, they provide everything to you, and that shame. It's very common because it's part of degrading the victim and making them sort of. You're degrading them, but at the same time, you're also building the victims up to ensure that they feel as though they're part of it as well. That they're on that the playing fields are level, and perpetrators of child sexual abuse have to work to do that at length, because the disparity between adult and child is so distinct. Like
Yeah.
it even visually, you can see it.
Yeah.
So they have to work even harder. It's not like and I'm not taking away the severity of it, but like an adult relationship where domestic violence or coercive control may occur.
Yeah.
The playing field is so uneven. So child sexual abuse offenders have to work to level that and make those victims like me feel as though
Bring those victims up, feel like they've got skin in the game, and that if this blows up, we're all in trouble.
Exactly.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
So you were saying in part one that when your daughter came home and you're pretending that it was your sister, that was a breaking point where you had to move away from the place. There was resentment for of your father, because he would have been strutting around as a proud father of the newborn. You said the relationship then with your daughter became the calling round, taking her out down to the beach, playing with her as if she was your sister.
Yeah, so I was sort of the older brother, coming over, just being a great older brother. A really involved older brother, and that's sort of the narrative that I played for many, many years. Taking my girl to the beach and taking her out for ice cream. I'd pick her up from her preschool sometimes and walk her back home before I go to back to where I was living at the time. And that was sort of because the sexual abuse ceased when I was 16.
Okay, how did that stop? Can I just ask how?
Yeah,
what was the line in the sand that?
Of course. I just remember the final moment being a sexual act that took place on my 16th birthday.
Yep.
And it sort of just ceased after that. There was again, it's confusing to explain. It's probably going to take a lot to unpack. But there was a trip to the Philippines where we wanted to show my newborn daughter. My father and my stepmother wanted to show what they thought was their newborn daughter to all my stepmother's half of the family in the Philippines. I joined them for that trip. There was, and I haven't spoken up publicly about this before, but there was a second perpetrator, a woman when I was 16 who sexually abused me a second time. I was raped by a different woman over in the Philippines. Yep. And my stepmother saw that as an opportunity to sort of get out of Dodge by saying that I cheated on her. Yeah.
Okay,
and that's when the relationship ended. Or I say relationship in quotation marks, but that's when the sexual abuse ceased. And then from that point on, when we got back home to Australia, the dynamic was, I'm just, fathering, we're co-parenting.
You've gone over the Philippines. The sexual abuse was still continuing after the child was born. Then there's a woman over there, and again, you're a 16-year-old boy, 16-year-old boy in that environment and taken advantage of. Then the stepmother has manipulated that by pointing the finger at you, accusing you cheated on me, so that was an excuse to
get out of Dodge.
Right, as in end the relationship. This is outrageous. How could you cheat on me?
Yeah.
Do you think it was all part of a manipulation?
Definitely.
In hindsight,
of course it was.
Set you up for it, basically?
Of course it was. It was an opportunity for her to, maybe, and again, I'm just sort of speculating here as to her mindset. I can't clarify for sure, but maybe it was her thinking her and I were getting sort of too close to teetering on the edge of being caught. But maybe she thought, we were teetering on that edge just too closely, so she wanted to cease it and sort of try to change the dynamic of the relationship.
I'm looking through my suspicious mind as a former cop. I'm thinking what she was setting up there, that the bullshit that she'd been telling you for those years, you're becoming more, you're bought into it and actually believing it. And I would suggest that she'd start to think, well, I'm never going to be able to cut this off because you're actually going to start putting on her, well, when are we running away to raise our daughter? I think that she's looked at that as the safest way to get out of it.
Evade accountability.
The manipulation, the deceit is just despicable, isn't it?
It's just Through the roof. I don't even know another way to articulate that, Gary. It's just such evil, just pure evil.
Okay, we're talking.
I've never spoken about that.
No, well, I appreciate you with your honesty, and I think the way that you are explaining the situation and what's happened to you, people can understand what you've gone through. Like I'm sitting here and I keep thinking back, and when we took a break, I was speaking with the producer and we're talking about you went through all this as a 15-year-old, what you were dealing with, how hard that is to process all the emotions and things that are going through your mind at that stage.
They're very, very adult situations that are sort of imposed upon a child. It's a very strange dynamic to be living that through.
Yeah.
And not even adult situations that normal adults go through as well. It's very toxic and awful.
No, that's an extreme situation to go through as an adult, with all the things that adulthood prepares you to deal with, the things that happen in life. So you've come back from the Philippines after that. The dynamics have changed and you've moved out of the house.
Correct, with another relative.
Okay.
Yep.
You're back here, 16. The sexual abuse with your stepmother has stopped. You're living in another house. You're keeping a relationship with your daughter under the pretense that
it's my sister.
It's your sister. Was there some joy in that? Like, I'm just,
of course. Of course.
Tell us about that, because we've focused on the negative, but there's something beautiful in the world that your daughter's come into.
Well, this little girl is just the light of my life.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen her for many years now. Those moments that I did have with her were just so special and just so lovely and beautiful. And, all I wanted to do, even as a 16, 17-year-old boy, 18-year-old boy, just dealing with this and navigating it, I just wanted to ensure that she had the best and provide that, because I knew that the life that I was living was chaotic. I didn't think it was... I felt comfortable in the chaos because I was privy to it. Like, that's what I was exposed to. But I knew it wasn't what a child should be brought up in. And even then, I wanted to take on the mantle of being her father and sort of provide as much as I possibly could with the means I had at the time. And she was witty and funny, even as a little girl.
Yeah.
And just quick, and I just loved everything about her. And I cannot wait for the day that we get to reunite and come back together, and I can explain to her that this wasn't her fault.
Yeah. And explain to her how much you love her and
of course.
How special she is in your life.
Of course.
How old was she when you last saw her?
She was 3.
They're fun.
She turns 9 this year.
Okay, that's a big part to miss out on.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry you're going through that.
Thank you.
As a 3-year-old, but you're seeing the personality, you're seeing the character they are. So you've got those memories.
I've got those moments.
I see the smile on your face. So clearly she won over her dad.
Yes,
pretty easy.
And she I mean, it should have struck a few chords at the time, but she looked like her dad too. So I'm glad there's 2 good-looking individuals in the world. I'm joking.
There you go. No, that's great, and I'm glad you can take some joy from what you've been through. You deserve some joy, so you shouldn't try and hold back on it.
No, of course.
It's special, and that sexual abuse cheated you of something very, very special. Yeah, it tarnished.
It did, and as you were saying, most parents attribute one of the best days of their lives as when their kids are first born.
Yeah.
For me, even that part of it was taken.
Stolen from
you. So I just look forward to the day that I can provide for that little girl and give her the life that I know she deserves.
Well, I'm sitting here looking at you and listening to you as a 24-year-old man. I think you've got big things ahead of you, so it wouldn't surprise me if that plays out the way it should be, because I think it's amazing the way that you've come through such a difficult path.
Thank you.
So at 19, you get... are you in... What's your relationship with your father between the ages of 16 and 19? Is that strained?
Quite minimal.
Yeah.
But it operated better at a distance.
Okay.
It was problematic when we were sort of under the same roof, and that, as I was saying, because the reason my father and I were at odds was because of the dynamic that my stepmother put us in. It's the only way we were like that, and still to this day, why me and my father, just because of the dynamic that my stepmother has put us in.
Like you're seeing the manipulation that
she's
imposed on you. You can only imagine what games she was playing with him too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and for all my father's faults, and he's not the greatest individual in the world, but I can understand where she has manipulated him and what she's been putting in his ear as well.
Yeah,
it twist his head as well. So I acknowledge that. Yeah.
Well, that's big of you to be able to see that side of it, because she's not going to just manipulate one person. You're quite right. She would have been manipulating your father. But I should call it the evil stepmother, because it's starting to sound like that. Yeah. She even stooped, not even lower, but another act that was despicable. And do you want to tell us about that?
Of course. So at 19 years of age, so this would have been 2019 for me, she wanted to leave my father. Reasons I don't know. I wasn't present in the house, and me being the sort of co-parent of my daughter, I wanted to ensure that the mother of my child was okay. That's my thinking at the time.
Understandable.
Right? So I went, okay. Well, I presented these these ideas. I said, I'm still under this coercion. I still think I was in a relationship, even at 19. So I hadn't got the help yet.
You hadn't dealt with that. So your emotional growth is stunted from the time you started getting sexually abused.
Exactly.
And hasn't really
progressed.
There.
No, not at this point.
Okay.
And so she wanted to leave my father. I get a call one day. I'm in my apartment. I lived by myself at this point.
Yeah.
I get a call from my father saying, can you go check the house? Can you go check on your stepmother and the baby? Because I've got all these bank transactions on my thing, and can you just go check that they're there? I go there, and all the cupboards everything's been taken out, everything's stripped, everything's been taken. She's flown to the Philippines to evade, to leave my father. And in order for her to have an opportunity to leave the country, she had to sort of wave the red flag somewhere else, and my dad would follow the red because he's like a bull, right? So what she's done is she's sent him an email that says that I raped her, meaning me. I raped my stepmother. And then I remember my father forwarding me that email, and he forwarded it to my biological mother as well. And then my biological mother called me and said, "What's going on?" And then I just was obviously in a state of I cannot believe what's happened now. Yeah. How do you? Anyway,
where do I start?
Where do I begin? Yeah. So my mother's picked me up, and she said, "Harry, is there anything you need to tell me?" And I remember I was sitting in the passenger seat of a car. I wasn't looking at my mother. I was looking straight ahead. And I said, "Mum, I engaged in an affair with my stepmom behind Dad's back, and there's a high possibility that my daughter or my sister could actually be my daughter." And that's the first time I ever told someone.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. How'd your mum react?
Oh, her face dropped, went as white as a ghost. I think there was potentially, and I'm not accusing her of anything, but there was potentially a feeling that something was off, but she didn't feel that it went to that extent. And I think I just confirmed that sort of off feeling she had about me growing up in those teenage years.
Yeah.
And that sort of dynamic I had with my stepmother, it was a bit off. But she never in a wildest imagination thought it would have gone to that extent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the rape allegation, was it the formal complaint, or was it just a hand grenade thrown to your father?
It was the hand grenade thrown via that email. Yeah. In that email. Yeah.
And so how did your father deal with your response?
Yeah, so when my mother picked me up, I knew that I wasn't safe being in my own apartment by myself. So I went and stayed with Mum for a few days, and that's where me and Mum sort of had like an ongoing conversation, because this is blown up for her as well.
Yeah.
And we're sort of trying to dictate what the best course of action is. And then that's where my mother went and approached my father and had a conversation with him and said, this has happened. I need you to, and that dynamic was sort of settled, yeah.
When did she say in the email when you supposedly raped her? Was that the
no? It was just a broad.
So just throw it out there,
yeah,
cause a drama.
I'm still of that thinking. I had an affair behind my father's back.
At that point in time, did you tell him after you told your mother what had happened?
I wanted to avoid it, but it got to a point where he came over to the house and sort of wanted to instigate a discussion to sort of make sense of what the hell happened. It was presented that this was many years and the possibility that, or the very highly likely chance that my sister's actually my daughter.
So when you discussed it with him on that occasion, did he accept it?
It was honestly to his credit, and I don't like to give him credit that much, but it was just taken with a sense of shock and a sense of just that dynamic that we were talking about before, where like he thought that I engaged in it, and he went, it was really interesting point in time where it wasn't reactive. It was just, he was actually it sobered him.
Trying to absorb the full extent.
And then he went away, and then sort of, obviously there's been a thing where she's gotten in his ear about what happened. Because he's been presented with facts. He's obviously taken it to her. She's shown her side of it, and he's changed his viewpoint since then.
As in
taking her side, yeah.
She's a master manipulator, isn't she?
She is indeed.
I just want to read something out. This is one of the interviews you've done about the impact it had on you, and I think it sort of encapsulates what you were going through. I'd got to a point where I wanted to take my own life. I was 20, my daughter had been taken from me, I was falsely accused of rape, I had the memories of what had happened to me as a child. That's a lot for someone to take on board. I got to the point where I just couldn't handle it. Yeah. So that's a fairly honest account, and this is, so you were saying 19 when the allegations, so you're talking here 20. Do you want to just explain what was going through? Just, were you overwhelmed with everything? You'd lost your daughter had gone over the Philippines, you've got the issue with your father, you've been accused of rape. Life's pretty shit.
It's not great.
Yeah.
I mean, in that quote you read there, it's pretty much just how it was. I mean, for me, the most devastating consequence of this abuse, Gary, has been losing my daughter. And I still haven't seen her to this day from that point that she left in 2019. But just, you lose your daughter, you're falsely accused of rape, you'll come into the realization that what actually happened to you was not a relationship, it was an abuse. It was blatant abuse and a total stripping of your teenage years and childhood. And that's when I entered a mental health facility at 20, because I came up with a plan to end my life on a Friday, and I said, I'm going to have my final weekend, and I was going to do it on the Monday. I remember going out the Friday and the Saturday night, was drinking, took anything I could, and got to the point on Sunday where I sort of had like this vision of my mother finding me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't deal with that. I didn't want to put her through that. So there was actually, on the same road that I lived on, there was a mental health clinic, and I checked myself in that Sunday evening before the Monday I was going to carry through the plan that I had.
Well, to get to that point, to even contemplate that, what you're going through, it was just overwhelmed. And is that low point was because you came to the realisation that you had been abused? The whole way that you'd been looking at your life was delusional up until that point with the relationship and everything else, and it all just caught up with you. Is that?
Yeah, so my mother, between that year of 19 when they fled and 20 of where I got into the mental health ward, my mother, really, really urged me to go get some therapy. Yeah, and they really did assist me with coming to that realization that what happened was not a relationship, it was sexual abuse.
Yep.
And that's it's very confronting. And it drove me to that point where I didn't want to be here anymore, and I needed more extensive help to assist me through that period. And it was the best decision I ever made, going to that mental health facility, because it really gave me the tools to, one, articulate what I went through. It gave me the language to actually explain what I was going through.
Yeah.
And hindsight's a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah.
But
we're always wise with hindsight, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly. But it also gave me the tools to navigate the trauma if it ever came up again. So I was in that mental health ward for about 2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it clearly, the way you're talking about it, it was beneficial for you.
Yeah, undoubtedly. It was single-handedly one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Yeah. Do you think if you went earlier on, you could have addressed the same situation, or did you need that life experience and that age and that wisdom to deal with it at that point in time?
I just don't think it was a possibility for me, Gary, to go before that point, because I was just under such coercion and just such manipulation and such a facade of what I was told like a relationship was presented to me, and that's all I knew.
I understand what you're saying, and
Yeah.
I think you're basically saying, well, it was a relationship. We all have problems in relationships, and this was just I was going through a relationship situation, and it didn't. You hadn't dawned on you. No, this was not a relationship.
Not
it
at
was
all.
abuse.
Yeah, not at all. Not until that point of
Yeah.
seeing those therapists for that year, and then getting to a point where it really dawned on me, and the weight of it all, especially losing my daughter, like that really plagued me, and it just it all came to a head.
That's another level that adds to the trauma, isn't it? The daughter, and it's clear the way you speak about your daughter, the love that you've got for her, and the impact that she's had on your life.
Undoubtedly.
So you've come out 2 months you spent getting help. You came out, but I would imagine, and I'm just saying this, I'm not sure you clarify it. I would imagine that doesn't mean you walk out and you're healed and the problem's gone. You still live with it daily. You just have the tools to address.
Exactly right. Yeah. I mean, you've articulated that perfectly. It's you don't come out and you're all is good.
Yeah.
You come out and you're sort of continuing to navigate it, but you've just got the proper tools to assist you in navigating it, because it's quite an ordeal that I have to say it's the understatement of the year probably. Perhaps.
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah, but it's quite an ordeal that I've got to navigate, and to have that assistance and to have that support, and to know that I can always go back to that as well. I have that safety net behind me no matter what happens. That's a real privilege that I possess.
It's something that you have in your back pocket, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you need to pull it out,
Yeah.
There's a way to get help,
Exactly.
which will hopefully stop you spiralling or feeling like you're on your own. So, how did life look to you after you came out?
I remember coming out as 2020, and I just had this little bit of hope. There was a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. It wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
But there was a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and I was sort of coming to terms with the fact that I didn't really identify as a survivor or anything that's about that, but I just didn't really. I was coming to terms with what happened and just trying to articulate my experiences and sort of navigate that. And then in 2021, Grace Tame won Australian of the Year, and I saw an individual who went through something similar on the national stage, and that was a real poignant moment for me to see that. And then it sort of just instilled in me that I think I have the tools and the wherewithal to advocate in my own way as well. I didn't know what that looked like at the time, but I knew that I wanted to help people, and it wasn't until a couple of years till I actually publicly spoke about my story for the first time, until 2022. But throughout those few years, just navigating it and just making sure I was okay before I could help other people.
Okay. It's interesting you mentioned the Grace and the type of things that you're doing here. I've got to say, Grace, seeing this when she was here in the studio, was one of the most impressive people I've had the pleasure to interview.
I couldn't agree more.
I was scared before she came in because she's pretty intimidating, but had a lot of fun in the way she articulated things, and I think it's great that, the stance that Grace took and the impact that's had on it helped you, and I think the type of stuff that you're doing now can help you as well.
Yeah, it not only helped me, it helped countless individuals across this country that didn't have the courage to come forward, and that's not a bad thing upon them, but they just needed to see that, and what Grace did was she forged that path.
Yeah,
she ran so I could walk today with the advocacy that I'm able to do. I stand on the shoulders of giants, of people like Grace and other individuals who have come before me.
Yeah.
So I really like to acknowledge that in opportunities like this when I get asked that questions of what your story was like, because it really was a poignant moment for me. It changed my life to see her win that award and say the speech she did.
Yeah, it was powerful in so many ways, and I think with people like Grace speaking up about situations like that, like I had the pleasure of working with Madeline West on the podcast series called Predatory, where she came out about her child's sexual abuse, and again, it's so powerful, and the work that Andrew Carpenter does, Shane Rattenbury, the politician from Queensland, all these people are out there making a difference. Russell Manser, a survivor,
rest in peace.
Sadly passed away, but he was carrying a lot of pain from the sexual abuse that he suffered in institutions. And I've got to say that I had no idea the impact that it has on the criminal world, the amount of people that have been through sexual abuse and then have gone down the wrong path. And I'm talking some serious hardcore crooks, bikies and that carry the pain of being victims of child sexual abuse. So for each and every one of you speaking out, I think it makes a difference. And I see it as an honour having this platform to allow people like yourself come on and tell your stories.
Well, thank you very much, and I couldn't agree more. Individuals like this, they change the discourse of the national conversation, and it's important that as a society, as a community, and you're leading by example in doing that, by honouring that, and by understanding that these are actually courageous and brave things to share these stories. It's not about
And that's right, and it's deeply personal, and you've got to expose a little bit of yourself, and it makes you feel vulnerable, coming out and talking about your emotions and what you went through. But no, I think each and every one of you are extremely courageous in the way that you approach it.
Thank you.
In regards to your advocacy,
yes,
let's talk about that. Let's get angry on a couple of things. The reference.
Yeah.
If you could explain that. And we spoke briefly, people who have listened to the podcast would have heard us raise the fact that people who have been charged with sexually abusing children shouldn't be given the luxury of having a reference as to good character.
Character reference, yeah, correct. So in May of 2023, so I came out with my story publicly for the first time in 2022.
Yep.
And I sort of knew that I wanted to get involved with legislative reform, because I knew it had a huge impact on people's lives, and I knew I wanted to get involved in that. But I didn't know where it sort of lied or sort of how I was going to navigate it. So I spent a year just sort of really building my connections within the space. I'd attend, talks and seminars and all that, and sort of just build connections. And so when I knew I wanted to pursue legislative change, I would, have people that could support me through that. And this thing of good character references just always irked me as such an injustice. I thought there's no way that type of crime should be allowed to have a good character reference attached to it. How can you be of good character and commit that type of crime?
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Defeat the purpose.
So when I spoke out as a survivor of child sexual abuse and wanted to change the laws pertaining to child sexual abuse, I said, surely there's no way that good character references are allowed for these types of criminals. There's surely no way. And I went through the legislation and was researching, and lo and behold, I find this sort of strange quirk in the law. And right now, what the current legislation is doing is it's prohibiting certain individuals, certain child sex offenders, from using good character references, but it's allowing a whole other class of individuals to do it. And the reason it's like that was because the current law was introduced by the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse.
Yes.
So at the moment, the individuals that are prohibited from using good character references are the teachers, the scoutmasters, the religious leaders, anyone who has outward good standing in the community and utilise that outward good standing to facilitate the crime. But Gary, there's a whole other class of individuals that are still allowed to use these good character references. The stepmothers, the neighbours, the grandparents, the older brothers, the cousins, whatever it is. But our argument is that good standing, it's a cultivated and very calculated and deceitful good character that they cultivate that still allows them to facilitate that crime. And right now in courts, in the sentencing, so this is at the back end of court, so they've already gone through a trial. A judge has found them 100% guilty of committing this crime. And then they come back in the sentencing and they're getting these discounts, essentially discounts because of their good character. But they're getting discounts on their sentences for the very thing that allowed them to facilitate the crime and commit the crime. So we're trying to extend the current legislation to encapsulate that category of offender as well. So no child sex offender can utilise a good character reference in the sentencing procedure of court. And last year in May of 2023, my campaign partner and I, Jared Grice, we started the hashtag Your Reference Ain't Relevant campaign. And we started in our home state of New South Wales because we live here. We got involved and in touch with the Attorney General here, New South Wales Attorney General Michael Daly. He initiated a review. The first review, it resulted in total polarity from advocates and people who agreed with us and the legal community.
Yep.
So then we came back and Michael Daly, thank God he did, he started, he instigated a second review with the New South Wales Sentencing Council, which is currently underway. And he took it to the Standing Council of Attorneys General meeting, which is the national meeting where all the AGs of Attorney Generals from each jurisdiction come together to discuss national consistency when it comes to law reform.
Yep.
And that pretty much single-handedly put us on the national map. And this was something that was of relative obscurity. No person knew that a pedophile could use a good character reference.
Well,
and now it's a core tenet of the national conversation because of the work that we've done, and we've been able to meet with the Attorney Generals from each state and jurisdiction, and we're continuing to meet more.
Well, full credit to you for making that difference, and so people understand what we're dealing with, and you've articulated it very clearly. Pedophiles manipulate. That's how they build a trust. So to have someone coming in and saying, oh, well, look, this person that was babysitting our children, they would always help. They'd come over and always offer to babysit the kids. That's not good character. That is basically, put that in the fact sheet. If I'm a cop, I'm putting that in the fact sheet. That's showing the tendency to create that environment where they can prey on people. So little things like that make a difference. But and like you chip away, and I know how hard it is to change legislation and the resistance that comes from the legal fraternity and everything. It's enshrined. It's hard. But that's the way we've always done it. Oh, you don't understand. And when you're trying to push changes in legislation, it's a battle. But full credit to you that you're getting it to this stage.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And look, Jared and I, and we have fantastic advocates that have come forward. You know, we've built this campaign, and we understand that we have a responsibility to allow other abuse survivors to share their stories. So we have a gentleman in the ACT by the names of Josh Burns. He shares his story. He's a fantastic individual. In South Australia, we have Alyssa James, who shares her story incredibly, just so bravely, just purely in the pursuit of change and wanting to make a difference. And it's really, really, really important that the courts incorporate an understanding of how this crime operates, because as you said there, this is good character. It is a weapon amongst their arsenal of deceit. it's part of the crime, and the courts have to understand that and encapsulate that in the sentencing.
It's like saying an armed robber that's got a balaclava.
Yeah, exactly
So
right.
I think that's
It's so ludicrous and backwards, and we just need to get on the front foot of it and change it. And that's where my advocacy lies. It's where I the good character references. That's my thing.
Well, good. Keep pushing for it. The fact that you've connected with so many people that have got shared experiences, is that helpful for you?
Oh, of course, and just to see, I have a friend named Anna, and she's a survivor as well. And I get asked all these questions. How do you deal with survivors that are constantly telling you their stories? Like, it must be hard to hear these stories all the time. And to an extent it is. And, there's a thing called vicarious trauma.
Yeah.
But my friend Anna, who's just amazing, she says, Harry, perception and mindset is so important. And you can view these stories as giving you vicarious trauma, or you can change that mindset and you can look at these survivors and you can think, my God, they're standing here on 2 feet after the adversity they've faced, and they're pursuing these beautiful lives and doing these great things. That's vicarious resilience. And that's how I choose to view it now.
Okay.
Vicarious resilience. So it's something to see a survivor speaking about their story and coming forward so bravely and courageously and sharing their lived experience purely because they want to ensure that it doesn't happen to another kid.
Yeah. That
builds me up. So it's sort of selfish why I do what I do, but it really does build me up.
No, well, you've every right to draw on those strengths, and I think when you refer to survivor of child sexual abuse, I think during this podcast I've made reference to victims of child sexual abuse, and I've been pulled up on that before because the way you sit here, you are a survivor. It's something to be proud, and the other people I've spoken to are survivors, and they're warriors in their own way. They've overcome things that no child should have to go to. So it's something that you should be proud of. What other things have you got going on in your life?
Yeah, so I do the advocacy. I go around the country. I have the privilege of being able to speak. I get to do incredible opportunities like this. Yeah. I have a thing called a Substack account, so I write articles and people are more than welcome to engage and subscribe to that.
How does that work, and how can they access that?
Yeah, so it's a web page. It's called Harrison James Activism Unfiltered, and it's just me being able to express my thoughts and sort of give my thought-provoking commentary on situations. And they can go to substack.itsharryjames.com and sort of subscribe to be a part of those articles and read up on them. But also social media is a big thing for me as well, and that's essentially how the campaign, the Your Reference Ain't Relevant campaign, that's how it's been able to get to the point that it's at now, because of the social media and just sort of the way that people are able to engage, and the impact of it. It's been really remarkable, and never in a million years did I think the kid that was going through what he did at 13 and 14, 15 years old would go on to be a voice and be quite a, not to blow smoke up my own ass, but quite a big voice.
A powerful voice. And I keep having to check myself that you're 24 years old, but you did say during the podcast that you had to, your maturity went exponentially because of the experiences you've got. And I'm sitting here opposite a person that's speaking with so much wisdom that's way beyond 24 years. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Your daughter, future hopes, plans, do you hope to at some stage reconnect with your daughter? I know in one of the many articles I've read about you, you've said you have to check yourself time and time again not to get on the plane and go over there and see her. But again, for the person that you are, the quality of the person that you are, you've said that you don't want to cause confusion in her life at such an early age where she's not ready to deal with it. So talk us through your hopes about the future there.
Yeah, of course. I hope more than anything that I'll be able to reunite with my daughter. It's imperative that I do. Because it's interesting. I've been stripped of a daughter. And, I talk about that quite a bit, but also at the end of the day, Gary, that little girl's been stripped of a father as well. And she'll never get those years back because of what my stepmother decided to do. and the shame and the guilt, it falls squarely at my stepmother's feet. And I hope that one day, my daughter turns 9 this year.
Yeah.
There's never going to be a right time to have this conversation, but right now is the least right time.
Yeah.
It's not appropriate for me, as you said. I've said in articles before. I fight the urge every single morning to get that first flight to the Philippines, to pick her right back up and bring her home to safety, where I know she's going to be safe with me. But if I go over there, that confusion that I'm going to impose upon her, there's already been one childhood that's been corrupted. I want to ensure, as a father, that I do everything in my power to impose the least amount of pain upon my daughter with this situation that neither her or I asked for. So I really hope that there's a day where, she'll, and if she's anything like her father, she'll ask questions, and she'll be curious and want to find out. And I not only do I hope, but I know that there will be a day where we reunite, because I'm going to ensure that it happens, because it's really important to me that I'm able to establish a connection with her, and I hope that's reciprocated on her. And I don't know what she's been told or will be told in the period of time that I don't see her, but all I can hope is that she and I can reunite and come together with an understanding of what's happened and an empathy. And I just hope that I can educate her on that and assist her through her own trauma that she's inevitably going to face by coming to terms with this. It's going to be very traumatic for that girl.
Mm.
And I recognize that. And as a father and someone who has been through pain myself, I want to be able to help her navigate that. And I hope that day comes.
Well, just the way that you've described that, I think hang on to a recording of what you just said in the last 5 minutes and send that to your daughter at the right stage, and she'll know how much she is loved and how special her father is. So I think you'll get that message across. And there's something about you, there's that X factor that I think, things will work out. And
Thanks, Gary.
I want to say this in wrapping up. I'm just... It's people like you that inspire me, like people that have experienced situations and that just come through the resilience and the way that you've come through and the balanced view that you've got on what's happened and the way that you accept it. I think anyone that listens to your story will be inspired, shocked by what you've been through, but also inspired and educated. So the work that you're doing, get out there to as many people and speak to as many people as you can, because I think you've got a really powerful message that is making a difference.
Thank you, Gary. That means the world. And just to have the opportunity to come on here and share that message, it means the world. And you're doing phenomenal work by allowing individuals like me to come on here and share those stories. So, again, just a debt of gratitude to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's an honour.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
The world is a good place when you've got someone like Harrison James advocating for survivors of child sexual abuse. He was a victim himself, but the resilience he's shown and the work that he's doing to not only tell his story but help others is truly inspirational. I really enjoyed sitting down having a chat with him, and I just found him a fascinating person and what a great outlook he has on life.